Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Dreamshell in the 15-minute pool on ICC. Dreamshell is 1888. Let's play knight f6 against him, and another game with knight f3. I'm gonna play c5 in this position. I played e6 in a different game recently that I played. All right, so with c3, he's offering me a chance to go into the exchange Slav. I don't think I'm going to take him up on that. I'm going to play g6 and fianchetto my bishop. There's a slight chance he might take this pawn on c5 and attempt to hold on to it, because having played c3, he is capable of playing b4 and supporting it. But I'm thinking he won't do that. I'll play bishop g7, and after bishop g2, maybe I'll go queen c7 just to rule out any aspirations he has of taking and holding on to this pawn. Is it necessary to do it right now? Yeah, let's do it just to be safe. I don't think he can punish this move per se. Like bishop f4 can just be met by d6, so this seems acceptable. I didn't want to take on d4 and go into the exchange Slav, like symmetrical position. Just not interested in playing that at the moment. Let's take a look at Dreamshell's ratings. Peak rating of 2108. Knight a3 is interesting, so he's kind of playing around with the idea of going to b5 perhaps. d6 would be a normal move here. If d6, knight b5, I can just play queen b6, that's fine. What about d6 and d takes c5? Queen takes c5, bishop e3? Any cause for concern? I don't think so, especially. I could play a6 to keep his knight out of b5, but I think I like d6. It just seems a little more flexible, so we'll do that. He might have a slight dilemma about where to put the dark square bishop. There's no clearly good square. I'm already arranging some pawns on dark squares. So g5 would make sense, actually. See if I would play h6. Taking in bishop e3 might make the most sense, actually. Wouldn't be surprised if he did that. He does take. I don't want to take with a pawn, because then bishop f4 comes and I'd have to move my queen. So we'll just do this. And if bishop e3, I'm thinking queen a5 is probably going to be my answer. Because I don't want to go to c7, because he has knight b5 with tempo then. So I'd rather go to a5 and make it harder for him to access the b5 square. Early queen trade offering. Well, I can decline that, of course, with a move like queen h5 or queen a5. I don't like taking so much because he can take with his knight, and then I might have trouble developing my light square bishop when b7 is under attack. So I'm actually kind of leaning towards queen h5, maybe with an eye towards playing bishop h3. And also simply knight c6 with tempo on his queen. I like the look of that, so yeah, queen h5 seems to fit the bill. Hope to do well in this game, because my bullet session did not go well, and I lost my blitz game. So not having a very good recording session here. It's bound to happen at some point. Of course, in the 15-minute category, I've done extremely well, mainly because the level of opposition is lower in this category. For whatever reason, just a lot of the stronger players in ICC don't bother with 15-minute. They're mostly interested in bullet and blitz. I guess it's not a mystery why. It's just they probably feel they get more practice at blitz, and a lot of times they're just on ICC blowing off steam. And if you're blowing off steam, you're not going to want to play a 15-minute game. That's more if you're trying to improve. So yeah, he persists. He's being very stubborn about the queen trade. Now I am a little more okay about going into this queen trade, because after queen takes h4, knight takes h4, there is pressure on b7, but I can easily play knight c6 and deal with it. So let's just do that and play knight c6. And then I can look to develop my light square bishop. It's kind of a bland position. It is slightly imbalanced, just the pawn structure, but the position itself is rather bland, I would say. Knight b5. If I play a6, he's not going to come into c7, I don't think. He's probably going back to d4. I could swap, but that doesn't lead to much. Probably will develop my light square bishop. It'd be interesting to play bishop g4 here. Threatening bishop takes e2. Maybe I can get him to make a weakening move. Like, he probably won't play it, but f3 would be nice, because then I could come back to d7. I think if bishop g4, that might just give him an excuse to play knight f3. So maybe I'll just go bishop d7. Bishop e6 is a nice square, but that knight c7 move. So let's just go bishop d7. He doesn't have so much control of the center with his pawns. This position kind of resembles like a Meraxi bind, except he doesn't have his pawn on c4 or e4. So the center is probably going to be up for grabs. Now, what am I looking to do here? Well, probably kick this knight back, first of all. We'll see if he plays knight d4 voluntarily, or if I'll have to play a6 to do it. But I'd like to go a6, probably rook ac8, and then maybe b5, with an eye towards playing b4. Like mini minority attack with my a and b pawns versus his c, b, and a pawns. Plays a6, okay. Interesting. That weakens the b3 square, so instantly my eyes went towards knight a5 trying to get into b3, but might be premature. Rook c8 definitely comes to mind. If rook c8 and he takes on c6, intending knight takes a7, that looks inaccurate because I could take with the b pawn, and if knight takes a7, his knight gets trapped. Just kind of cut out of play. So I'm not concerned about that line. a6, I think if I play rook ac8, he'll probably play bishop e3 and maybe threaten the a7 pawn again. So how thrilled am I about that? Maybe not so much. Rook ac8, bishop e3, a6, knight d4. Could play knight a5 then, once again. Actually, that looks pretty good. Now let's go rook ac8. Part of me wonders if I should use the other rook for this purpose, but I think rook ac8 looks more natural, so I'll do that. I'm going to keep knight a5 in reserve. I don't really want to play it quite yet. Yeah, he returns his knight. That's the reason why I didn't want to go bishop g4, because I thought that might just give him an excuse to play knight f3. So now what about knight a5? Well, that would drop the a7 pawn, potentially. Okay, let's just play a6. I think I have to play that sooner or later. If he goes knight d4, there's some congestion on the center squares. I don't want to play knight takes d4, because that just allows him to replace his knight. He has a superfluous knight situation going on, where this knight on f3 really wants to get to d4, but of course it's taken away by his other knight. So if I go knight a5, is he going to go knight d2? And do I care if he does? No, I think that development would be in my favor. Let's go knight a5. This is the real test of his a4 idea a few moves ago. I know I can't get into b3 right now, but c4 is tender. e5 might be an idea to kick away this knight. If I can get him to play something awkward like knight d2, I think it will be a bit of a moral victory for me. I think I have a slight initiative right now. Nothing substantial, but there's some troubles to solve for him. So bishop e3 begs the question, what happens if knight c4? I'm attacking e3 and attacking b2. I assume he's just going to go back to c1. I could also play knight d5, or even knight g4. Knight d5, bishop g5. Let's go knight c4. We'll attack that bishop. I expect him to retreat it to c1. And I could repeat myself, but I probably won't. I mean, bishop c1 is practically the only move that makes sense here. It's always a little bit lame to have to play a move like bishop c1, just kind of going back where you came from with your tail in between your legs, but it's his best move right here, I think. So on bishop c1, I'm looking at e5. I'm looking at knight moves like knight d5 or knight e4. e5 would be direct. I can also play rook c7, maybe, with an eye towards doubling up my rooks. The thing is, I think he wants to play b3, is what he's getting at. Like b3, knight a5, and then c4, maybe? Then e5. Not entirely sure. I feel like playing something non-committal right now, like rook c7. I'm going to do that. I'll go rook c7. Can't quite figure out how to proceed, so we'll keep our options open. Knight d2 might be a decent move, though. Offering a trade. Knight d2, maybe I'll go back to a5. Keep him bottled up. And see how committed he is to playing b4. Yeah, let's go back here. I think we can mess with him a little bit and do that. I just don't want to trade and assist his development. It seems like we're shadowboxing with him going bishop c1 to e3 and then back to c1, and myself doing the same with my knight, but I'm trying to stop him from coordinating. He's hesitating to play b4 because it weakens c3 so severely if he does that. Yeah, knight b3. I can go back to c4, but he'll go back to d2. Huh. e5, knight takes a5 doesn't help. Knight c6. I'm going to go back to c4. Yeah, and he would be okay with a draw, I assume, so not going to do that. I can't double up my rooks because he can take on c4, rook takes c4, bishop takes b7. I can play knight e5. Maybe I'll go knight e5. We're playing Ring Around the Rosie with our knights right now. I really want to retain this knight, though. I don't want to trade it. Unless I can trade it on c6, where he's taking with his knight and maybe helping my pawn structure out. That I might be okay with. It's a different mentality playing down and rating like this versus, playing someone closer to my own rating. I might have been more content just to make an easier exchange like that. But I feel like I have a much better chance to beat this guy if I constantly pose him like tiny problems like this and just make him use time, pick away at his position, wear him down. I'm not risking too much by doing this. I don't have too many weaknesses. So I think the strategy is fine. So what could he play here? I think he'll probably look to challenge this knight again. Or there's a good chance he'll move this knight or play a5, I think. Like knight e4 is a move that crossed my mind. I would trade and maybe even jump right back to c4 soon. Okay, so he's persisting and hounding that knight. So maybe here I'll go full circle and play knight c6. It's possible. Yeah, but knight c6 he can just develop his dark square bishop, can't he? There's still some trouble for him in where to put that bishop, though. Like knight c6, let's say he plays bishop e3. Maybe I can go knight d5. Yeah. Okay, we'll play knight c6. We're about even on time. To his credit, he hasn't weakened himself or given me much to work with. And he's holding his own. Yeah, bishop e3 again. So I'm thinking knight d5. Knight d5, he can go to g5. Could also play pawn e5 here. That move is always playable. And I think knight d5 is the way to go. Let's attack that bishop. Be funny if he went back to c1 again. I don't think he will, but yeah, he goes to d2. Okay, well now I can go knight a5 once again, and at least then he can't play knight d2. So, am I gaining anything from this whole process? I can also go knight b6, trying to go knight c4. The only thing is, if knight b6, maybe he plays b3. Huh.
Draw?
I think I like knight a5 better. Yeah, for the draw. No, no draw. My viewers would kill me if I took a draw in this position. It's so rich. There's so much to play for, Dreamshell. My opinion about draw offers. I used to offer a lot more draws in over-the-board games, but now I hardly offer any at all. In fact, I'll go tournaments oftentimes without offering any draws, even though I'll have games that end in draws. I think if you're looking to improve, making a personal rule just never to offer a draw, that's a good idea. I mean, within reason, right? Like, if your opponent and you are just moving around and it's pretty clear that the other one is just waiting for the opponent to offer a draw, then okay, you can use common sense. But if you're really looking to get better, I don't think offering draws is ever going to help you too much. So, all right, so here, now this is getting interesting. So again, I have knight c4 if I want, but he's probably going to go that old chestnut, bishop c1. Knight b6 is interesting. Knight b6 would attack a4, and then if b3, I have this e5 move. There's also the move order e5 first, compelling knight c2, and then knight b6. Don't think I like that one quite as much. I think I like knight b6 first. Because if knight b6 and b3, I do have e5. Yeah, let's go knight b6. I don't have time to contemplate all the ramifications of knight b6 versus e5, but this move seems correct. So working against the a pawn, working against the b3 and the c4 squares. This is really funny. I've made, what, 7 consecutive knight moves now? From moves 18 to 24. That's hilarious. And now I'm going to make another knight move too. Probably knight c4. Yeah, I'm just seeing if there's any tricks that I can make use of here. I don't think so. Knight c4 is the move. Now he's going to go a5, I think. This is his point. I can go knight d5. He'll probably play bishop e1 then, I'm guessing. Knight a4. What's up with knight a4? Knight a4, he'll again play bishop e1, I think. Knight a4 is more ambitious. Just strikes me as a more fighting move than knight d5, because knight d5 I'm in the range of his bishop. So let's go knight a4. And if bishop e1, I think I'll just double up my rooks and bide my time a little bit. That will strengthen any threat like knight b2 that I have. So let's just do this. I mean, I'm slightly worried about the future of this knight, but he can't really attack it another time. He could play rook a2 with an eye towards going rook d to a1, but that plan seems slow and awkward. I mean, actually, simply put, I'm just threatening to like move this knight, like maybe even knight e5, then cash in on c3 eventually. The only problem with this pawn on a5, like my b7 pawn is kind of nailed down to a weak square. Okay, so he's doing that. Doesn't knight b2 win an exchange now? I think it does. Yeah, that rook is trapped. Let's do it. So starting from move 18, I made so many knight moves in a row. And now even more knight moves. Just take that. Ooh, maybe I had actually e5, e4. I just automatically took there, but that probably wasn't quite the best move. Okay, knight e5. Yeah, e5 would have been good. This is also still good, but always best to be accurate, right, as we have discussed. All right, pawn takes, he can go knight b3 or something. Yeah, we don't want that. Let's take here. Anticipating knight e2. Yeah, I made this a little difficult for myself. Let's go bishop here. Let's start bugging him with my bishops. He has to play f3 now. So f3, maybe bishop f5. Attack d3 that way. His structure remains solid. I mean, obviously I'm happy to be up in exchange, but knight takes d3 was an autopilot, bad move. d4, it's a little weakening. Okay, let's not think too hard. I'll just go bishop d3 next if I can. His knight is glued to e2 because bishop takes d4 occurs if he doesn't watch it. Yeah, see, now I have bishop d3, right? Or bishop g4. Doesn't matter too much. Let's go bishop d3. Yeah, I think I can just take. Okay, he's still fighting. Still fighting. Okay, bishop here. We can go c4. I'll probably play e6 after that. Maybe bring my king to the center. Can go maybe bishop f2 and try to go bishop to b6. What about bishop b2, rook c2, bishop a3? Just kind of playing with fire there. My bishop might get caught behind enemy lines. I could play d5. d5, he'll play c5, however. Let's go h5. Just take some space. Bishop b6, I'll play rook d7, probably bishop d8 eventually, just to kick him out. Yeah, bishop d8 is coming up next. He's choosing to play actively. He's looking to play b5. Go king f8. We'll see if he plays b5 or not. He does. Okay, let's take. Because if he takes with the pawn, I get access to c3. He can take that way. This is true. d5, bishop d8. d5. Huh. Let's play king e8. Drops the bishop back, yep. Let's go here now. So if he takes rook c3 check, looks annoying. So I would actually anticipate him playing c5 now. But then I've locked his light square bishop out for now. Don't think he should have played bishop e3. Because if he leaves his bishop on b6, if ever I play d5, then c5 is much stronger with that piece there. But now there's a chance he'll just get locked out. Okay.
Check.
Let's give another check. See where he goes with that king. Probably f1. Yeah, we'll take. Probably he'll play bishop takes. Can play rook b2 if I want to try to force the exchange of rooks. That might be the safest thing to do right now. It also guards b7 from the rear, so that's nice. This position might be still mildly hard to win, but I think I can take care of business. Let's go here. Now I'm actually threatening bishop e7. He can't move his light square bishop. Well, at least not somewhere that would allow rook d1. Okay, so bishop e7 now. Yeah, and his rook is running out of squares to defend d5. It's going to cost him. And here's Zine. Okay. Yeah, interesting game against Dreamshell. So, he said thanks for the game. Back here, though, once I got this in, you just got to be very wary of autopilot moves. I mean, you see me making an autopilot move right here. Knight takes d3. I basically just checked out after knight a b2. I knew I was winning the exchange, and I mentally checked out. I said, okay, well, wherever his rook goes, I'm going to take it. But in doing so, I passed up what I think is an easier win here with e5. Yeah, there you go, e5, and after the knight moves e4, just picking up a piece. I'd rather pick up a piece than the exchange. Actually, this position is still pretty one-sided according to the computer, but yeah, not a good display of technique at that particular moment. Overall, I'm very happy with this game. I'm going to take a look at it now. So, unusual opening. I played c5. The critical move here is d5. If white wants to aspire to an advantage, they have to play d5, I believe, in this position. So, it's interesting that he went c3, just a restrained approach. And as I said, if I was interested in playing a position from the exchange Slav, I can do this. Other moves that are completely acceptable for black are e6. Even b6 is probably fine. But since I haven't played a setup with g6 and c5 for a while, I decided to do this. Now, he can take the pawn on c5 if he wants. That would actually be pretty interesting. Because whenever c3 is played, there's always this possibility of b4 propping up the pawn. So, you know, I probably would try to develop in a way, like I might just play bishop g7 here. Develop in a way that I can put pressure on c3 if he does play b4. But still, that might be a critical move for him to attempt. So g3, I played bishop g7, bishop g2, and now queen c7, just to make sure he doesn't do that, doesn't change his mind. I think these moves were all fine for both sides. Yeah, he takes on c5, I took it with my queen. I don't like queen d4, I think that was inaccurate. I think bishop e3 straight away would be a better idea. Queen d4 seems, especially if he's going to go queen h4 and his knight becomes sidelined after the subsequent trade of queens. I just don't really approve of that choice by him. Yeah, and a4 turned out to be more of a weakening move than anything. I think he played this intending to gain some space on the queen side. He does have a majority over there, but it severely weakens the b3 square. That's the primary drawback of that move. So rook a c8. One line I mentioned is if bishop takes c6, trying to win the a7 pawn, I can take with my pawn, and knight takes a7 is probably just losing the knight straight away. Rook c7 or rook a8. You can go bishop e3, but I have like knight d5, and let's say, yeah, actually that just wins the piece outright, doesn't it? Because if here I can just take on d4 and deprive him of a defender, the only defender. So he can't consider doing that. So he played knight back to f3, and I played a6, knight here, and so superfluous pieces, you see this a lot with knights. So superfluous knights are knights that are competing for the same square. In this case, it's the d4 square. Clearly, this knight that's on d4 doesn't want to go to f3, so even though they're in connection with each other, d4 is the primary square that both those knights are focused on. It's an outpost central square. So I want to make this knight on f3 bad, and I want to highlight that its only purpose in life is to get to d4. So that's why I didn't want to allow an exchange or initiate an exchange myself for this knight. I want to say, hey, this knight is poor on f3, and I know that, so I'm going to move my knight away so you can't take and jump the other knight into d4. And that was the theme over the next several moves, because he kept trying to get rid of this superfluous knight, and I didn't cooperate. So rook c7 I played, knight d2, yeah, knight a5. Not really using the engine here, because I don't think there's a whole lot that the engine's going to reveal. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. I think it's more interesting to look at this type of strategic concept without an engine for now, like superfluous pieces and learning how to think about exchanges. So I am allowing him to exchange here, but as I said, if he did do this exchange, I was considering taking with a pawn, and then I gained the open b file and more central influence too, which is nice. So I guess I'm not completely opposed to a knight trade, but I want to be able to gain something. I want to be able to point to something and say, I gained this because I was stubborn about avoiding a knight trade. And that's how we got this ring around the rosy situation. Knight d5. Okay, right around here I will start using the engine because I think this becomes sharp right about now. So knight a5 was good. Yeah, and it likes black quite a bit. Let's just go back for a second and see. So knight c6. It says he should go a5. Okay, a5 at a moment when I can't bring my knight into the a5 square. That does make sense. We'll just check briefly what the engine thinks about this whole knight dance. Knight e4. That's interesting. Knight e4 rules out knight d2. I might have just been hesitant to make that move because it puts the knight on an undefended square, but it does make sense. Knight d2, knight a5. Yeah, here. It's possible I was overdoing this concept to the extreme and going a little overboard with it, but I just knew that it bugged him that I wasn't trading the knights. So that's why I kept doing it. And it was a pretty low-risk proposition anyways. Yep, bishop d2 and knight a5. Now he goes here. I play knight b6. Okay, so the computer thinks just double up the rooks right away, rook fc8, which is useful in like every variation to put more pressure on c3. Knight b6. Ah, so b3 is okay for him, huh? I don't have e5. e5, c4. I didn't properly calculate c4. I don't think I saw c4 during the game in response to e5. I just saw, well, this knight could be driven away and I can win b3 maybe. But that might not be entirely true. There's also b4, but b4 I figured I could jump in here. So that would be fine by me. Interesting. So maybe knight b6 is not so accurate. Maybe I should double up rook fc8 and leave the undefended knight on d5 for a move. Huh. b4. Yeah, this became good for me, though. He got a little overextended. Here I had a slight debate about whether to play knight d5 or knight a4. Settled on knight a4. Computer thinks knight d5 might be a... Well, now it's changing its mind. Okay, knight a4. Double up the rooks. d5. Okay, d5 props up the knight a bit better. So that's a good move. Basically, my minor piece activity is reaching not decisive proportions, but it's gathering momentum pretty quickly. And his minor pieces are assuming defensive roles, and that's the reason why Black's edge is so huge here. Yeah, now knight ab2. So he blundered in a cramped and difficult position. Rook a2 is interesting, though, huh? Trying to go rook da1 and attack a4. Let's just follow the computer's line in that case. d5, rook da1, b5, propping up the knight. A takes b6, and I'm going to assume this knight takes, defending here. Maybe c3 is weak. Maybe black can go e5. Black holds an advantage still. That's fair. So you see how like he eventually blundered, though, when I kept probing, kept applying the pressure, didn't allow him to make easy exchanges. That's what you want to do a lot of times, especially against low-rated opponents. Keep probing them, especially if you can do it in low-risk situations. You know, with this whole... I mean, how many knight moves did I make in a row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 knight moves in a row. So, and then another couple after that. And at no point in that knight ring around the rosy charade was I ever making like a huge committal decision. It was just constant, like, you know, kind of trying to pick them apart. Yeah, and as I said, my biggest regret is that I didn't play e5. e5 followed by e4, forking the rook and knight. Apparently also here, knight b2 would have been good, attacking the d-pawn. I'm going to assume if bishop f1, then e5 is the way to go, followed by a light square bishop move to attack that pawn. Let's see. Knight c2, bishop b5. c4 doesn't help him. Knight takes d3, wow. And if bishop takes, just bishop takes c4, and he's in trouble down the c-file. Kind of mortally pinned. So the engine does find some more accurate ways to convert my advantage to the full point. Let's just take a brief look at the position after knight e5, because yeah, I made it difficult for myself because this pawn mass, if it gets going, could have a mind of its own. Just trying to harass him a bit. It's a little frustrating when you feel like you've outplayed your opponent and that you deserve to win, and the win is like still not forthcoming. So you just got to keep your nerve in these positions and remember that nothing is promised to you in life and in chess. h5 was just a space-gaining move. Maybe I should have gone for the d5 move, though, before his bishop lands on b6, huh? Then c5. I thought this would be kind of a task to break down, though. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think this is a -3 position. To me, this looks a lot harder to win. At least practically with, less than 3 minutes on your clock. Again, d5 is the computer's preferred move. Yeah, bishop e3 looks like a mistake. Because now d5 is strong. He took, but I get rook c3 check in.
Check.
Check again. Yep, take the pawn on d5. Oh, I actually didn't even see that the pawn on h2 was hanging. I blanked on that. I played rook b2, also looks decent. Because I figured he'd have to trade, and then I could try to just win this endgame up the exchange. Still have to be kind of careful, but instead he tried to keep all the pieces on the board. But after king d8, he's kind of in a conundrum. Because if he retreats the bishop somewhere, like g2, I don't know why he would do that, but rook d1 is mate. He could go to f3 to cover, but I would assume rook f3, rook d3 or something is good. Or rook b3, I guess, also good. Because then if the king comes up to protect, take, and bishop d4.
Check.
So, king d8, yep, and then bishop e7. Winning material. Rook can't stay defending the bishop. One other thing I forgot to mention, so as far as superfluous pieces, most often it's knights that you see this concept. It could also be rooks. Like often rooks are competing for the same square. And when you have a superfluous pair of pieces, that just means either 2 pieces in your own camp or 2 pieces in your opponent's camp. So you're referring to pieces in one's own army with that. So it could be rooks, could be knights. Not bishops though, right? Because bishops are on opposite diagonals. Hopefully that's obvious. They don't really get in each other's way too often. But yeah, you want to avoid redundant pieces like this. That's why he was so eager to exchange that knight the whole game, and why I was trying to play off that fact. So, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this game against Dreamshell. Was glad to get a win because my other games today didn't go so well. But I'll be back tomorrow with another standard game. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you later.